The West doesn't suffer from a lack of certain values, it suffers from a lack of lived coherence. Think of strong families, moral discipline, social obligation, modesty, care for the vulnerable and elderly. These are not theoretical positions, they are ways of life that the West has lost or is losing.
The reason why we're discussing this topic here today is because there's a lot of hate. And we have to realize that in this current moment, yes, the Muslims are facing the bulk of it, but actually this is a moment of incredible fragmentation. Many homes are feeling scared today.
I think there's a couple of things we can do. First of all, stop seeing converts as burdens and as charity cases. I was actually with an organisation up north volunteering, and I was introduced. This happened, and it broke something in me, actually. This about 6 years ago. I was introduced to colonels and generals from the British Army as, this is Lauren Booth, she used to be someone great, now she volunteers for us.
Firstly, just to define positive role, I think the term positive role is one which can be quite ambiguous. What do we mean by positive role? And so I would like to define it for myself. For me, a positive outcome, I would say, is that we provide guidance for those who have no guidance, or we create friends of the guided.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. I ask Allah to bless this evening. Now, tonight we will be discussing how can Muslims play a positive role in the West. I had an interesting discussion with a member of my family today, not that one, don't get excited. I have other family members. And because it's Christmas, they said to me, you know what's really annoying is that Christmas has been taken from us. You see that the Jewish community have their menorah candles around North London right now, and there's Diwali, but there's no Christmas. And she was annoyed because Christmas has become merry greetings and season's greetings and Winterval. And she said to me, and I'm sitting there in hijab going, she doesn't hear the nuance here, just keep a straight face. She's like, you know, you get to have Eid and we're all supposed to be happy for you. But we're so nice that we've given you your festivals and ours have been taken from us. So at that point, you have to really engage in a very, very gentle discussion. I'm not sure if I succeeded, but I gently proposed that some of her talking points were straight from the far-right playbook. And these are some of the schisms and real cultural moments that we're facing right now, and I hope we'll be discussing them. You can ask me about the outcome later. So Islam teaches us to establish positive relationships, wherever we live, based on mutual social aims and cooperation. As Allah tells us in Surah Al-Hujurat, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. O humanity, indeed we created you from a male and a female, and made you into peoples and tribes, so that you may get to know one another. Surely the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous amongst you. Allah is truly all-knowing, all-aware. But we have a lot to contend with, because the public landscape for Muslims in the West is undergoing strain, and each one of you will have your daily experiences. Across Britain and Europe, there is a coordinated normalization of hostility, which has now become mainstream politics and policy. Anti-Muslim movements are no longer confined to the pubs and the rugby clubs, not that they're all confined there or guaranteed to be there, but a corner of society where it was more acceptable. They're no longer obscure corners of the internet. They're hanging flags in public spaces, staging demonstrations with tacit political approval, and leveraging media narratives to paint our very presence as an existential threat. These signals make Muslims feel unwelcome, unsafe, and are out of place in civic life. So the meaning here is clear. Our mere visibility, our sacred practices, and our dress are being politicized and portrayed as incompatible with Western values. Now there's hard work to be done, and it begins with us here this evening. So tonight's question for our panel and for all of you here is not if we can play a positive role in Western society, but how. Tonight is not about cultivating hopelessness or rehearsing defeat. We simply do not have the time. So here are the parameters to help us really make some headway, inshallah. First, our panelists will each put forward a broad overview based on their experience and their expertise. I will then ask a series of specialized questions, after which we will open to your questions. Now, please, 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 do not offer long expositions during the Q&A, so that you can really gain from each other's questions and from the answers and expertise of our panel here. Now, I will be throwing you some questions after the Q&A, as we want to hear about your work. We want to hear about your successes, and we truly want your suggestions. Respect is tantamount and pivotal to us being representative of the teachings of our Habib, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said he only came to perfect manners, and I reserve the right, as the chair, to shorten any interventions as I see fit in order to keep momentum going. Thank you for your understanding and cooperation. May Allah put barakah in our gathering. Ameen. Without further ado, let me introduce our panel. Paul Williams, Brother Paul. You know, sometimes I've noticed, have you ever noticed this? Sometimes when we're converts, it's like Lauren and Paul, we don't get brother and sister. No. Paul Williams studied philosophy and theology at the University of London and later embraced Islam. He is the founder and director of the Blogging Theology Academy and the celebrated comparative religions platform, Blogging Theology, which brings together some of the world's most prominent theologians and scholars from diverse faith traditions. He travels widely, delivering lectures on theological and philosophical questions, and has been featured in the 2024, 25, and 26 editions of the Muslim 500, the world's 500 most influential Muslims. If you want to tuck beer now, you could. No. Dr. Suhail Hanif is the CEO at the National Zakat Foundation. He works on Islamic legal theory with a focus on the Hanafi school of law. He received an MA and DPhil from the University of Oxford. His doctoral thesis studies the interplay of rationality and tradition in classical Hanafi legal thought. He spent over a decade in Jordan studying Islamic sciences with traditional ulama. He has held senior academic roles at Qasid Arabic Institute, Cambridge Muslim College, and taught at the University of Oxford. He also served as head of research and development at the National Zakat Foundation. Welcome, Brother Suhail. MashaAllah. Allahu Akbar. And finally, Imam Ashraf Dabous. The Imam joined LIC as Deputy Imam in September 2017 and later became Imam and Head of Education. He studied at the Islamic University of Medina, obtaining a diploma in Arabic language and a bachelor's degree in Dawah and Usul al-Din. He studied privately with various shuyukh in Hanbali and Hanafi fiqh, Hadith and the philosophy of Hadith. He holds Masters in Cognitive Behavioral Therapy from Goldsmiths University of London and has qualifications in person-centered counselling. Welcome, Imam. Without further ado, I invite the panelists to give their own overview of the topic at hand, beginning with Brother Paul.
The question is, how can Muslims play a positive role in the West? And I want to begin by questioning the framing of the question itself. is often asked as though Muslims are a problem to be managed or a presence that needs to justify itself. But Muslims have been playing positive roles in the West, in Western societies for decades, economically, culturally, professionally, and intellectually, as we can see from the extraordinary CVs here tonight. That isn't really in doubt. The more interesting question is, I think, what kind of role is now required of Muslims, given where the West currently finds itself? Because the West is not confident, it's not morally settled at all, it's not even clear what it believes. We are living through a civilizational crisis, not just a political disagreement. Our institutions may still function, but the moral and metaphysical foundations that once sustained them are clearly eroding. In that context, Muslims face, I think, two temptations, both of which should be resisted. The first is assimilation by reduction, trimming Islam down so that it fits in comfortably within the liberal secular world. Islam becomes a private thing, a private identity, a set of religious feelings, or a collection of social justice slogans. That adds nothing. It simply mirrors the very confusion the West is already suffering from. The second temptation is withdrawal, defining ourselves primarily through grievance or cultural defensiveness. And that too, I think, can be sterile. It produces isolation, not influence. The positive role for Muslims lies elsewhere. Muslims in the West, I think, should function as a moral and intellectual presence, not just a pressure group. Islam is not merely a faith tradition in the narrow sense. It's a coherent account of reality, of the truth, of reason, of morality, purpose, our human purpose, family and authority. The West was, once upon a time, had something like this, perhaps 2 or 3 centuries ago. Muslims in the West should function as a moral and spiritual and intellectual presence, witnessing to Tawheed, which Europe used to believe in very powerfully, not just as a pressure group. And Islam is not merely a faith tradition in the narrow sense. It offers a coherent sense of reality, of truth, of morality, of reason, of human purpose. The West, as I said, had something like this in the past. It's largely lost it. And Muslims who actually know their tradition rather than merely inherit it culturally are uniquely positioned to speak into this civilizational vacuum. In other words, we have something unique to speak to the world. But this requires confidence and clarity without hostility. Now, equally important is what I call embodied practice. The West doesn't suffer from a lack of certain values, it suffers from a lack of lived coherence. Think of strong families, moral discipline, social obligation, modesty, care for the vulnerable and elderly. These are not theoretical positions. They are ways of life that the West has lost or is losing. When Muslims live them, when we live them visibly and consistently, they become arguments in themselves. They don't even need words. They are witnessing to the reality of Islamic practice. And finally, Dawah in the West, in the Western context, is sometimes misunderstood. It's not about marketing Islam or winning debates, although I can speak because that's all I do in Speaker's Corner. But hey, it's about demonstrating that Islam makes sense of the world and of our human condition in a way that modern secular ideologies manifestly do not. So Muslims play a positive role in the West, not by shouting louder, particularly online, or blending in quietly and becoming invisible, but by being intelligible, grounded, and serious. People who know who they are and therefore have something real to offer the West, inshallah.
Dr. Suhail, please, let us hear your overview of the topic at hand.
Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah وعلى آله وصحبه من والاه. Assalamu alaikum. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here. The reason why we're discussing this topic here today is because there's a lot of hate. And we have to realize that in this current moment, yes, the Muslims are facing the bulk of it, but actually this is a moment of incredible fragmentation. Many homes are feeling scared today. Muslim homes, Jewish homes, white homes, colored homes. It's a very strange moment of a lot of people feeling scared. And it's a moment that we have to think not just how to defend ourselves from hate, but do we actually have a solution for a way forwards? Because when people turn on their TVs or their media or whatever they listen to, and they want to know, why is everyone feeling so left behind? Why is there so much poverty in the UK? They say 1 in 3 children, 1 in 5 adults is in relative poverty. Excuse me. We have local authorities going bankrupt. So we're at a stage of something is really crumbling here. And when people listen to, pundits and authority figures, all they hear is one of 2 versions of an argument. One version is some form of keep calm and carry on. It's okay. We are going to get out of this by doing exactly what got us into this. And that's not really likely. And that's why people have stopped believing. And that's why the top 2 parties in the polls are not your traditional parties anymore. Like the country has given up in the keep calm and carry on version of affairs. The other analysis people hear is the language of hate. That these people ruined it. Let's get them out. We all know, yes, we are the object of that, so we're particularly sensitive to this conversation, but we also know if we step out of ourselves, hate can't solve any public problem. Hate's not going to fix the economy. Hate's not going to address inflation. Hate's not going to improve the NHS. And so we're at this very dangerous, fragmented moment of not many clear solutions. I do believe our Islamic sacred law presents a model of a third way. Not keep calm, carry on, and not hate. The third way is something about community formation, community building, structuring communities, training people that they are responsible for their neighbors. That's at the heart of the sacred law, and unless we can create a partnership of community and government, we will not create the safety nets that this country needs. So I'm going to be championing today what some people find is a very controversial statement, which is that Sharia can save Britain. And I want to explain what I mean by this in my comments.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. Just to give a warning, to forewarn that some of that which I might say might be slightly controversial, and unfortunately I believe that we have to be willing to be offended in order to learn and better ourselves. When the sick person goes to the doctor, they do not go there with a manner of defensiveness and an attitude of defensiveness. Rather, they are going there in a vulnerable position and situation, and they are willing to be told that which they do not want to be told about themselves in order to better themselves. Why? Because it's a matter of life and death in many situations. If a person is eating themselves to death, the doctor has to inform them, you need to stop eating so much. If a person is not exercising adequately enough, the doctor has to inform them, you need to engage in exercise, and so on and so forth. And the reason I say this is because, firstly, just to define positive role, I think the term positive role is one which can be quite ambiguous. What do we mean by positive role? And so I would like to define it for myself. For me, a positive outcome, I would say, is that we provide guidance for those who have no guidance, or we create friends of the guided. Those are the 2 outcomes that I would seek, that we guide or we have friends of the guided. And we find that this was the approach of the Prophet ﷺ during his lifetime. He would seek to bring guidance, or he would seek to make friends of the guided in those who do not receive guidance themselves. As for those who have a dislike and a hatred and an animosity towards Islam, there are going to be a camp whom we have no influence over. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us this in the Quran. And so we do not need to worry ourselves or busy ourselves with those people. So now back to the first point. How can we bring guidance? How can we befriend or win over those who will not receive guidance but they will become friends? How? Very simple. We look to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in Bukhari and Muslim, where he first received revelation and he went to his wife, the most beloved to him, Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, and he said, I fear for myself. And Khadija, she said, Kalla. She said, no way. For Wallahi la yuhzika Allahu abada. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never disgrace you. Why? She did not mention anything theological. She did not make mention of the verse that the Prophet ﷺ had received, whether or not he had expressed this to her, but she mentioned his character. That was the first thing that she went to. The first of those who received guidance by way of the Prophet ﷺ, they received guidance through what? His character. They already believed in him prior to his receipt of revelation. And so if we would like to have a positive impact, and the positive impact being that we become mediums of guidance for others, or we create friends of the guided, then we have to rectify our character. And currently, and I'm talking about from experience working in a masjid and speaking with other imams, currently we are lacking in this issue, severely lacking. And you only have to look at statistics to prove this. For example, the number of imprisoned, a very high percentage of those being Muslims. Cases recently, and forgive me for mentioning things of such a crude nature, but I'll try to be polite, abuse of various kinds. And the argument that yes, but we are underrepresented in when we look at the large amount of perpetrators, we're a small number. There shouldn't be any number because we have Islam, and so on and so forth. And this starts with the smallest of things, such as the way we park, to the biggest of things, such as the way we trade and transact and our politics, etc. Character is the answer. And I'll conclude with that, inshallah.